He's not the kind of guy who gets mad and stays mad, but he never forgets. And he remembers for a very, very long time. Mel Brooks, the super smart funny guy who made Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, is the man who turned messy craziness into amazing art. For over 60 years, he's made people laugh until they held their tummies. But behind all the laughter was a quiet person who always kept things in control, a man who ran the world of comedy with careful rules and focus. All through his movie-making time, Brooks met all kinds of actors, the super talented, the weird ones, and the ones who were just impossible. Some forgot what they were supposed to say, some didn't listen to his directions, and others stepped onto his movie set thinking they were way more important than the movie itself. For Mel, that was all it took. Once your name got put on his secret list of people to avoid, it stayed there forever. He never yelled. He never slammed a door shut. He just got quiet and acted like you were never even there. From the movie The Producers to Spaceballs, every film was a little reminder. Brooks could change the whole story of the past or just remove you from it without any warning at all. Now, after being quiet for his whole life, Mel Brooks is finally ready to tell everyone the real story. He's talking openly about the times people let him down, the tense, uncomfortable times on the movie set, and the famous names that almost made his movies fall apart completely. Five actors, each one super skilled, each one you can't forget, but remembered by Mel for all the things they did wrong. And for the very first time, he's telling us their names. Which famous faces made Mel Brooks say never again? Who were the stars talented enough to shine brightly but just too proud to stick around? Make sure you stay until the very end because what you're about to find out might totally change the way you think about Hollywood's most loved movie legends. Number 1. Gene Wilder. Some people who hurt you are strangers you don't know. Mel Brooks's most painful hurt came from a friend. Gene Wilder wasn't just another actor on the set. He was Brooks's creative twin brother, the spark that made his ideas fire up. Together, they didn't just make funny movies. They completely changed what funny movies could be for everyone. The Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, each one wasn't just a big hit movie. It was a giant change in how comedy was made. But after Young Frankenstein, something felt different and shifted between them. Wilder had written most of the movie's script. Brooks had shaped it, directed it, and fought very, very hard to keep the movie just in black and white. The result was like catching lightning in a glass bottle. It was an instant, amazing, classic movie. But behind the scenes, a crack had already started to form in their friendship. Wilder had another story burning in his mind. The funny adventure of Sherlock Holmes's smarter brother. He wrote the script, he wanted to be the director, and he wanted Mel to be the producer who helped pay for it. Brooks said no, not because the script wasn't funny, not because it wasn't a good idea, but because, as he later said, Gene thought he was ready to direct. I knew he wasn't ready yet. Wilder felt like this was a huge letdown. He had expected Mel to fully support him in his new idea. Brooks gave him space and stayed away. That distance between them turned into a long period of silence. Wilder went ahead and made the movie without Mel's help. The actors in the movie looked familiar, like Marty Feldman and Madeline Kahn, but the perfect way they worked together was gone. The special spark between them had become weak and dim. For 4 long years, Brooks and Wilder didn't talk to each other. No big argument, no news headlines, just a quiet time apart. Two men who used to finish each other's jokes now walked on completely different roads. Brooks reportedly told a friend, "It was like watching your brother pack his bags and leave home, except he took your best joke with him in his suitcase." They would bump into each other again many years later by chance at an event that neither of them had planned to go to. No big speeches, no saying "I'm sorry." Just two old friends sharing the same room and maybe, just for a moment, remembering how great the laughter used to sound when they were together. There was no huge, dramatic apology, no crying and hugging reunion, just a handshake, a few funny jokes they told each other, and something that looked almost like friendship again, but a small crack stayed in their bond. They never worked on a movie together after that meeting. Not because they were angry, but because of a quiet disappointment that never went away. Brooks once said that Gene Wilder was the only actor he ever trusted with his half-finished ideas. He could give Gene a movie scene that wasn't fully written, a character that didn't have a final joke and W. Wilder would complete it perfectly as if he already knew exactly where it was supposed to go. After Smarter Brother, that special trust never fully came back. Wilder had stepped outside of Mel's safe circle, and Mel Brooks, even with all his laughter, never let anyone step outside of it twice. In public, they acted warm, kind, and polite to each other. But in Brooks's private, secret world, the one held together by perfect rhythm, gut feelings, and loyalty, Gene Wilder was the one who broke the connection. Not because he was mean, but enough to leave a lasting mark. Because sometimes the person who knows you best knows exactly where to pull hardest to hurt you. Number 2, Frank Langella. Some actors only lose a movie role, but Langella lost the director himself. On paper, he seemed totally right for the part. Brooks was making the movie Dracula Dead and loving it, and Langella had already played the role of Dracula on the big stage with great success. He was tall, very charming, and acted like a true theater star. Everything looked perfect until it wasn't quite right. He was Dracula, at least the very serious version of him, and that was the whole problem. Mel Brooks was not making a serious movie. He wasn't looking for a sad, old-fashioned story or dramatic scenes soaked in emotion. He wanted total messiness, people falling down awkwardly, jokes that landed like a sudden lightning strike. A vampire who could say a long, serious speech 1 minute and then trip over a candle holder the next. But Frank Langella walked into the early movie preparations as if he were about to perform the serious play Hamlet again. From the very first day, the mood was all wrong. Rehearsals went on way too long. Brooks, who usually ran his sets like a perfectly working circus, found himself having to slow down. Langella didn't react to the jokes. He didn't make up things on the spot. He spoke his lines like they were very important, sacred words, heavy, slow, and totally immune to acting freely. He wasn't playing Dracula, Brooks later told a friend. He was playing a saint. Brooks tried to guide him back to the right path. Notes, gentle little pushes, soft hints, nothing worked at all. Langella would nod in a polite way, then go right back to the exact same acting like a marble statue performance. Tension started to quietly grow behind the scenes. Brooks needed speed and energy, but Langella brought only seriousness and heaviness. Scenes that were supposed to be light and fun collapsed under the weight of every serious, long pause. The other actors, who were expert comedians and character actors, started to hesitate and hold back. Crew members began whispering, "Is this supposed to be a comedy or an opera?" Then came the moment when everything broke. During a test read of the script, Brooks gave Langella a new line. A classic Brooks surprise, very serious in the build-up, completely silly in the final joke. Langella blinked slowly, paused, then asked in a flat voice, "Do you want me to make fun of the script?" Brooks stared at him for a quick moment and replied, "No, I want you to survive acting it." That was absolutely the final straw for Mel. By the end of that week, Langella was completely gone. No yelling, no official statement, no big scandal, just a quiet replacement with another actor. Leslie Nielsen, a completely different kind of Dracula, one who could act very straight while the whole world around him fell apart in perfect chaos. That was what Brooks truly wanted, not seriousness, but control over the silly chaos. Nielsen delivered it perfectly. Langella did not get it. Officially, the change was called creative differences, which means they just didn't agree on how to make the movie. But anyone who was close to the production knew the honest truth. Mel Brooks was not going to try to wrestle a serious Shakespearean statue into doing funny physical comedy. He wanted someone who completely understood the joke before the final funny part hit. Langella never understood that. He left the movie quietly and never spoke about the experience again. Brooks, to his credit, never said a mean or harsh word about him in public, but whenever Dracula, Dead and Loving It came up in interviews, Brooks spoke of Leslie Nielsen with just one word: perfect. Langella's name never came into the conversation at all. In Brooks's world, there were only two types of actors: those who made the craziness better and those who were completely overwhelmed by it. Langella came in acting like royalty, wearing a serious crown, but Mel wasn't building a royal court. He was building chaos, and in his world, you had to love the fall and the silliness. Number 3, Chevy Chase. Mel Brooks had a special feeling about energy, like a sixth sense. He could feel, even before an actor spoke a line or practiced a scene, whether someone belonged in his funny world. With Chevy Chase, every instinct in him screamed no. They never worked together, not a S. Ingle time, and that was not a coincidence at all. It was a very careful choice. Throughout the 1980s and early 90s, Chase's name came up in discussions again and again. Studio bosses pushed hard for him. He was a huge star, a famous name that guaranteed sales, the face of American comedy with a quick, smart wit and a signature emotionless way of speaking. But every time, Brooks shut the idea down immediately. No thinking about it, no meetings, just a quiet, very firm no. Because Mel Brooks didn't cast famous people, he cast people who had the right rhythm, the right trust, and a craziness that could be totally controlled. And in his gut, he knew Chevy Chase would never fit into that dance. Why? Because Chevy Chase broke the first rule of Mel Brooks's world. He didn't play nicely with the other actors. Brooks had seen this problem long before the idea of working together even came up on TV talk shows, in secret stories from the industry, in warnings from friends they both knew. Chevy was sharp, fast, and dangerously funny. He could make a room light up with laughter, then quickly make it feel empty and dull. Brooks reportedly told a casting director, "He's not acting with the others. He's just waiting for everyone else to stop talking so he can prove he's the smartest person in the room." But Brooks didn't want the smartest man in the room. He wanted the most generous actor, someone who could land the final joke and still leave space for another actor to get the final laugh. That was definitely not Chevy. The closest they ever got to working together was during the casting for the movie Spaceballs. Chase's name was brought up for the character Dark Helmet. He had the dry, serious tone, the emotionless face, the right kind of rhythm. But Brooks barely considered the thought for a moment. He wanted Rick Moranis instead. "Rick knows when to take a step back and let others shine," Brooks later said. "Chevy only knows how to interrupt and jump in." For Brooks, how the actors worked together was more important than who got the most credit. Timing was absolutely sacred. A big ego was not welcome. In private, he described Chase as someone who crashed the comedy instead of dancing with it. He admired the man's talent, his natural instincts, his sharp wit, but he hated the way it always seemed wrapped up in being distant and too cool, always smirking slightly, always detached from the scene. Comedy to Brooks wasn't about being cool or ironic. It was about truly believing in the moment. No matter how silly or absurd the joke was, you had to fully commit to it, live in it, and mean it. Chevy didn't do that. There was one single meeting between the two of them. It was short, very polite, and instantly forgettable by both. It ended with Mel offering a small, half-hearted smile and saying, "Maybe we'll work together in another universe." Chase never made it into Mel's universe of comedy. Years later, Brooks hinted at this feeling in an interview, being careful and polite without mentioning names. "Some actors are so aware of themselves," he said, "they forget to actually be present in the moment." He added, "You can see them thinking about themselves while they're supposed to be in a serious scene." The host quickly asked if he meant Chevy Chase. Mel just smiled and quickly changed the subject. For Mel Brooks, how people work together was everything. The shared rhythm, the small space between the lines, the unspoken promise that every great comedy relies on, "Trust me and I'll completely trust you." But Chevy Chase didn't trust anyone at all. He used silence like a weapon, his words like sharp knives, and every single conversation had to end with him being the winner. Brooks never cared about winning a conversation. He cared about the whole group, about balance, about the flow of the scene, about timing, and about trust. In the end, Chase wasn't officially banned. He was simply left out, not because he wasn't funny enough, but because he just didn't fit the feeling of the set. And in Mel Brooks's world, people who were different were totally welcome, as long as they understood the special rhythm. But a big ego disguised as just being confident had to stay locked outside the door. Number 4. Harvey Korman's. On the movie screen, Harvey Korman was pure gold. Brooks trusted him with some of the biggest laughs of his whole career, and Harvey delivered every single one of them perfectly. Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety, History of the World, Part 1. Corman could hold a completely ridiculous face for just long enough to make you burst out laughing, then drop it back to normal with perfect, precise timing. But behind all that brilliance, there was tension, the kind Brooks rarely ever talked about with people. Corman came from the popular Carol Burnett show where he was the backbone of funny scene after funny scene. He was very used to being free, having loose scripts, making things up as he went, and being in a room He changed to fit his own instincts. But Brooks's movie sets didn't change for anyone. They were carefully planned, very precise, more like a perfect symphony than a messy sandbox. Every line, every reaction, every pause was a necessary part of a much larger rhythm, and when someone drifted too far off the beat, the whole piece started to fall apart. Corman, for all his genius, drifted off the beat very often. Their biggest disagreement happened during the movie High Anxiety. Brooks had cast him as Dr. Monteague, the very pompous and sinister head of the Psychoneurotic Institute for the very, very nervous. Corman wanted to completely change the role. New little funny traits, new lines, even full rewrites of the script. Brooks shut the ideas down immediately. "We already wrote the funny part," he told him bluntly. "We just need you to perform it exactly as written." Corman did not take that well at all. The set started to feel very tense and uncomfortable. He began pausing for a long time between takes, questioning where he was supposed to stand, questioning the timing of the jokes. Brooks, who was usually the first person to crack a joke or improvise a funny bit, started cutting conversations very short. What should have been a smooth, fun shoot turned into a series of quiet disagreements. Crew members later called it passive warfare. No screaming, no huge explosions, just constant negotiation and disagreement. Mid-shoot, Brooks shared a secret with a producer. "Harvey wants to be the director," he said, "but I already have that job." By the final week, the two men were barely speaking to each other. Brooks gave notes to Corman only through his assistant. Corman kept entirely to himself between the takes. The energy that once made Blazing Saddles work so well had become stiff and cold. The rhythm was gone, the laughter felt forced and unnatural, and the trust was quietly broken. The performance still worked perfectly. Harvey Korman was simply too good an actor to let the tension show on his face. On the screen, he was flawless, his timing sharp, his delivery perfect, but Mel Brooks never, ever forgot what it took to get that performance. After High Anxiety, Corman's name quietly disappeared from all of Brooks's future movie projects, not because of anger, but because of pure exhaustion. Brooks would later explain it in his own very careful way. "Some actors bring pure joy to a set. Harvey brought brilliance," he said, "but it always came with resistance and fighting. There was no public fight, no dramatic goodbye, just a quiet understanding between them that they'd gone as far as they could possibly go together." Corman stayed proud of their work. He spoke very kindly of Brooks for many years, and Brooks, to his credit, never denied Corman's huge impact on his best films. But the working partnership was completely done. The rhythm had been broken beyond repair. And Mel Brooks, more than anything else in the world, built his world on rhythm and perfect timing. He could handle simple madness. He could handle big movie stars, weird actors, and total chaos wearing a costume. But when working together turned into a competition, when the laughter started to feel like a battle to win, that was exactly where Brooks drew a final, hard line. He didn't care about winning a silly argument. He cared deeply about the laugh. And when the laugh cost more effort than it was truly worth, he simply walked away quickly. Number 5. Jerry Lewis. Mel Brooks deeply admired genius, but he had absolutely no patience for arrogance and acting superior. And with Jerry Lewis, he saw one kind of person completely buried inside the other. Both men were like architects of comedy, builders of completely absurd worlds where the chaos somehow made perfect sense. Both wrote, directed, and starred in their very own visions. For years, the big movie studios dreamed of putting them together in a film. It never happened, not once. In private, Brooks described Lewis as brilliant and completely exhausting. He fully respected the movie The Nutty Professor. He respected the famous legacy, the precision, the invention, but he did not respect the man who was behind all of it. The breaking point came in the middle of the 1980s during early talks for the movie Life Stinks, Brooks's dark, funny movie about a billionaire who is forced to live on the streets with no money. Someone suggested Jerry Lewis for the lead role. For the studio, it sounded like an amazing dream come true. Two comedy legends, one big project. But for Brooks, it sounded like a total nightmare just waiting to begin. The studio had also suggested Jerry Lewis's name for a major supporting role. They claimed it would add importance and a touch of brilliance to the movie. But Mel Brooks didn't believe it for a second. "I don't need someone who thinks he's funnier than the movie itself," he reportedly told his producer very firmly. Brooks knew Lewis's reputation well, rewriting lines. Right there on the spot, completely taking over the director's job and sucking up every bit of air and attention in the room. Brooks was not built to share control with anyone, not in the editing room and absolutely not on the movie set. They met only one single time. A mutual friend had set up a dinner, hoping that a spark between them might turn into a powerful working synergy. Brooks came feeling curious. Lewis arrived late, then immediately launched into a non-stop 15-minute speech about the history and evolution of American comedy, barely even looking at Mel across the table. Brooks listened patiently, waited for a moment of true connection that never ever came, and quietly excused himself before they even got to dessert. After that night, the idea was totally dead. Mel later said he didn't want to work together, he just wanted applause. And that was the end of it. Publicly, both men remained polite and cordial. No open insults, no big fights. But people on the inside knew that there was no real warmth, no deep respect, no sense of a missed chance to work together, just a mutual decision to ignore each other. Brooks once joked, "When it comes to funny people, I don't cast the ones who think they are the center of the whole universe. I already have a son who does that." That sentence perfectly summed up his entire feeling. Mel Brooks built teams of actors, created organized chaos where the madness had a perfect rhythm and the ego had to serve the joke, not the other way around. He let stars shine brightly, but only if they understood that the whole galaxy didn't revolve around just them. Jerry Lewis couldn't fit into that orbit. His ego burned much too bright and was too focused on himself. Brooks saw it very clearly. Working with Jerry, he said privately, would have been like a nuclear explosion. Not because of the talent, which was immense, but because of everything else that came with him. The rewrites, the explosions of temper, the fights over control. Too loud, too much drama, too late for him to change. There was never a single scene they shared, never a phone call to talk about the project, not even a real job offer, just a man Mel Brooks respected only from a safe distance. Because even geniuses can get pushed out when they start mistaking the movie set for a reflection of only themselves. Brooks didn't need to raise his voice or make a huge, angry scene. He simply closed the door quietly, and he closed it for good. Some actors missed out on his movies because they just weren't good enough at acting. But these five men, they absolutely had the skill and the talent. What they completely lacked was trust, perfect timing, humility, or just a clear understanding of the room they were standing in. And with Mel, once that trust was gone, there was absolutely no way to come back. You weren't just cut from the movie project, you were completely erased from his conversation altogether. So tell me, who do you think almost ended up on this list of people Mel disliked? Or maybe who you think should have been put on the list? Drop your guesses and thoughts in the comments section down below. And if you want to get early access to the next episode of Hollywood's Hidden Blacklist, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and join the channel for members-only deep dives into these secrets. Because in Mel Brooks's universe, actually getting cast in the movie wasn't the biggest win. Staying cast in the movie was the real victory.